Lake house encounters and suspicious encounters. A few winters ago, about 6 months after finalizing my divorce, I was in desperate need of a reset. My girlfriend at the time, Christina, suggested we take a quiet trip somewhere far from the chaos I'd been dealing with. We found a cozy rental on a lake in upstate New York and booked it for a week without much thought. The place was perfect, a modern yet rustic house right on the lake, surrounded by woods. Only a handful of other properties dotted the shoreline, most of them empty. It wasn't peak season for lakefront living, but that's exactly what I wanted, to be as far from civilization as possible. The host wasn't going to be there, but he left detailed instructions on where to find the keys and some basic info about the house, standard Airbnb stuff. When we arrived in the morning, there was a small package waiting for us on the front steps. No return address, just a handwritten note that said, "Enjoy your stay. Make sure to stay warm." Cute but odd. Inside the package was a tiny box of matches. We shrugged it off as a weird welcome gift, harmless enough. Christina joked that people upstate were always a little eccentric, and we moved on. The first 2 days were exactly what we needed. Long hikes through the snow, hot drinks by the fireplace, and total peace and quiet. The snow had been falling steadily since we arrived. Not quite a blizzard, but enough to make the landscape feel untouched. It was perfect. The house itself was cozy, with a master bedroom on the second floor featuring massive windows overlooking the lake. The roof, or at least the windows, must have been thin because we could hear the soft patter of snowflakes from inside. There was also a skylight, so we could fall asleep under the night sky. It was serene until the third night. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to a sound. It was faint, barely audible over the wind and snow. The storm had intensified, and the outdoors now resembled a full-blown blizzard. The sound stood out because it wasn't natural. It was mechanical, almost man-made. I got out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Christina, and made my way to the window. What I saw was the last thing I expected, a snowmobile moving slowly across the frozen lake. I know snowmobiles on frozen lakes aren't unusual, but it was the middle of the night, and the snow was coming down hard. Visibility was poor, but I could make out the shape of the driver. They were moving cautiously, as if unsure about the ice, and then they stopped completely. The person climbed off and started waving their arms, clearly in distress. They were shouting, but I couldn't make out the words. To my horror, I realized they were facing our house. Did they know we were there? It seemed impossible, but they clearly needed help. I woke Christina and told her what was happening. I got dressed, went downstairs, and stepped outside onto the deck. The cold hit me immediately, biting through my layers. As soon as I opened the door, I saw the person on the ice was a woman. She was shouting for help, crying, and repeating that she had lost her little boy in the snowstorm. My heart sank. If there was a child out there in this weather, they wouldn't last long. I laced up my boots and made my way toward the lake, telling Christina to stay inside. As I approached the woman, I noticed she was bundled in a thick fur coat, her hair pulled back in a tight braid. The ice was solid, so I wasn't worried about falling through. But as I got closer, her story started to unravel. She said her son had run away from home, and she was looking for him. That gave me pause. I expected her to say he'd fallen off the snowmobile. But how could she not notice that? The adrenaline must have been clouding my judgment, because I didn't question it until that moment. Just as I was about to ask for more details, she said something that froze me in my tracks. "Do you still have those matches?" For a split second, I had no idea what she was talking about. Then it hit me, the matches from the package on the first day. The note. She had left it, not the host. Before I could react, she reached into her coat and pulled out a gun. She demanded my wallet and phone, and I handed them over. I had no choice. The whole interaction lasted less than 30 seconds. Without another word, she climbed back onto the snowmobile and disappeared into the whiteout. I ran back to the house, shouting for Christina to call the police. She was already on the phone when I got inside. I locked the doors and paced the room, still shaking. I kept looking outside, half expecting to see the snowmobile circling back. The cops showed up about an hour later, but by then, the fresh snowfall had covered any tracks. Christina was hysterical, but I was mostly angry. I had come here for peace, and instead, I'd been robbed. The police searched the area and found an old boat ramp on the far side of the lake. Their best guess was that she had come from there. I was furious and insisted they keep looking, but they told me there wasn't much they could do. Even if she left something behind, they'd never find it in all the snow. Christina and I tried tracking my phone, but it was already offline. The Airbnb host refunded the entire trip and sounded genuinely shocked when I told him about the package. He confirmed he knew nothing about it, but something about the whole situation didn't sit right with me. How did that woman know we'd be staying there? Why go to such elaborate lengths for a simple robbery? I couldn't shake the feeling that the host was involved, but I had no proof. I brought it up with Airbnb, but they were about as helpful as you'd expect. For a long time after that, I couldn't help but wonder if my ex-wife had something to do with it. It's a paranoid thought, but the whole thing was so bizarre. Even now, I have no idea why someone would go through all that trouble just for a wall-in phone. Unless they got some sick pleasure out of it. It just doesn't make sense. This past summer, I was 20, and my friend James invited me to his family's lake house. His family is wealthy, with properties all over the country, and this one was on a secluded lake. The lake wasn't massive, but it was big enough that you couldn't swim across it easily. Most of the houses around it were vacation homes, sitting dark and empty most of the year. James's parents were never around, so he had free rein to invite friends over. One night, it was just the two of us. I had just broken up with my girlfriend of 3 years, and I needed some time to unwind. We were having beers on the dock when I noticed a light flickering across the lake. At first, I thought it was the sun reflecting off something, but even when I moved, the light stayed. It was flashing in a pattern, 3 short bursts, 3 long ones, then 3 short ones again. James snapped his fingers and said it was Morse code for SOS. I didn't believe him until I looked it up on my phone. He was right. The flashing continued for a minute before stopping abruptly. James wanted to call the cops, but I reminded him we'd been drinking and weren't legal yet. I was already fighting a DUI charge, so the last thing I needed was another run-in with the police. We decided to check it out ourselves. If it was serious, we'd call for help then. We grabbed some switchblades from James's brother's room, just for peace of mind, and dragged James's dad's kayak into the water. At first, it felt like an adventure, but the further we got onto the lake, the quieter we became. The sun had almost set, and it was getting harder to see. When we reached the house, the dock was half collapsed, and the flashing had stopped. We beached the kayak on the yard and crept around the house until we found an unlocked window. The house was completely empty. No furniture, no signs of life. We made our way upstairs to the room where the light had been coming from. Inside, we found an old projector facing the window. Alarm bells went off in my head. This was a trap. James realized it too and bolted. We ran back through the house and out the window, but when we got to the lake, the kayak was gone. That's when we saw him, a man running toward us from the side of the house. He was big, fast, and I didn't want to stick around to find out what he wanted. James jumped into the lake, and I followed. The water was freezing, but we swam as fast as we could toward the light from James's house. By the time we dragged ourselves onto the dock, I thought I had hypothermia. We locked every door and called the police. It took them almost an hour to show up, and when they did, they found nothing. No one, no signs of recent occupancy. Just an empty house. To this day, I don't know who was in that house or why they set that trap. Most of my friends think it was a kidnapping attempt that fell through at the last minute. I don't know what would have happened if we hadn't run, and I don't think I want to know.